Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 20th, 2024, and this is episode 953 of Living Free in Tennessee. And numbers dyslexia strikes again. I said the wrong episode number while looking at the episode number. Anyway, it's a Friday, so it's a homestead happening show, and we're just going to talk to you about all the things going on the homestead. And the really fun part is that my show notes are missing now. So we don't have show notes today. So you can pretty much ask us anything. We're live over on Noster as well. So, hey, Noster folks who have tuned in, I'll shoot out a message soon saying we're live. But if you want to ask questions, just shoot a comment in and it shows up over here on my dashboard. So if you guys see me like looking at the corner, those of you on the other platforms, let folks know we're live today. I did not get all of the messages out. We will tell the story about why later in the show. So what we're going to talk about today is the infrastructure we've been putting in and how that's going, the great ramening of 2024 and an update on that, and a whole bunch of other stuff. If there's anything you want to hear about while we're here, just ask us. If you put the word question in all caps, I'll know you want it on the show. So with that, I want to say, hi, Tactical. How are you?
Tired.
It's been a minute 37 seconds, and I let you speak. Are you happy about that?
Whatever.
Good morning, Skanes girl and Eric. Good to see you. Eric must be like back out of his mysterious assignment off grid. So you're going to see him at SRF if you go.
I'll be there.
Are you going to go to SRF?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm always wondering if he's going to be like, this time I'll just stay home. Eric would like to know where your shepherd's cane is.
Probably a landfill somewhere.
Yeah, we did donate it to Goodwill because it was in my way in my house, and we don't need more clutter right now. But we did get a picture of him in the pasture with the cane before we sent it on. And I learned later who had sent that to you, but that's a story from a different time. But right after we got the sheep, somebody sent us a plastic gold shepherd's cane, and it was kind of hilarious because it was little Bo Peep over here taking care of his sheep. That was the whole point. Okay. Before we jump into all of the list of topics that hopefully I'll locate before we actually have to talk about them, I want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is the wound closure class that Chuck Peoples is doing October 3rd. That's in like 2 weeks at SOE in Camden, Tennessee. This is where you learn how to sew and staple and all of those things, and how to know how to align the skin right and all that stuff. You get to go home with your own wound closure practice kit. So if you attend the class, I wanted me to be sure to let you know that that's part of the deal. That's over at selfreliancefestival.com. If you look on the homepage, it's listed as a standalone item. If you scroll or in the menu under workshops, you can see all the workshops that are happening before Self-Reliance Festival. I also want to thank 2 sponsors today. The first sponsor is the Wealthsteading podcast. John Pugliano loves making money, and he is happy to share how he's approaching it with you on his podcast, the Wealthsteading podcast, like homesteading, wealthsteading. And he's been a great supporter of this show and our community for many years. Check out his podcast at thewealthsteadingpodcast.com. Our second sponsor of today's show is discountmylarbags.com, a local Tennessee business from a fella who, when he came into the Preparedness Network, he was like, yo, how do I help this network? Because these are all like badass people who know how to grow food and preserve food or tactically defend themselves or like all this stuff. And he's like, all I know how to do is buy stuff from China. And he's like, oh, wait, I can source things in bulk and pass on those savings to everybody else because it's ridiculous what Mylar bags cost. And that is how Discount Mylar Bags got started. He quickly transitioned from a dude with a full-time job running a side hustle to that's his retirement business. Check it out, discountmylarbags.com. If you're a member, you can, in fact, get a discount if using a coupon code that you get in your portal. Okay. That's all that stuff. So then, luckily, I found my show notes this morning. Whoa. Okay. Tactical. Can you think now?
Yeah.
You like last week, you're like, don't talk to me about anything. I was trying to figure out the, what was it? The the schedule for Self-Reliance Festival, how he was going to get there. Why couldn't you think about it?
Yeah, at that point it's like I've got several big things that I'm in the middle of dealing with, and it's like my brain power is already allocated. I don't even know when Self-Reliance is. As far as I was concerned at that point, it may as well be next year. So
anyway, yesterday the concrete pad was poured, and in order to get ready for the pour, we had to level out a space. And when leveling out the space, we found, not unexpectedly, bedrock, right?
yeah,
And you don't move bedrock. Well, I mean, not on my budget, you don't move bedrock. And then we had to build up the step, or the plat, what's it called? Tier. There's a word for that. Terrace. We had to build up the terrace, and then build the form with gravel. The good news is our neighbor came over with a tractor and moved gravel around, but that didn't mean there wasn't gravel that had to be shoveled. Yeah. How many days did it take you to build those forms and all that?
The forms didn't actually take that long. It was the trying to get everything built up to where it was level, and doing it in such a way that we didn't need 5 dump truck loads of gravel, and also doing it in such a way that it's not going to be a complete nightmare for me later in life, which is what most people do. So
yeah,
most people would have just, that's level enough, bring in a couple of dump truck loads of dirt, and then you end up 30 years later still dealing with the gravel coming out from underneath the slab.
So what happened is he got it pretty well leveled. I was asked to order 5 cubic yards of concrete. I ordered 6 because what you don't want is the concrete truck here and not enough concrete, and then you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that we really only needed 5, really, maybe a little more than 5, but yeah, it was pretty well graded. The form looked great. And then Jason was also there to teach Tactical and me how to oversee a pour. So I got to put my hands on pretty much every phase of the project, so that I could, have a feel for all of the different roles. And that was great. And then once it was all poured and edged and all that, he came back around and prettied up the stuff that I did, because I'm not as good at concrete as he is. But anyway, it looks great and it's solid. And guess what's happening next Tuesday?
Be glad when this is over.
Yeah, the swim spa comes. I believe there's a dog. Look, she's either looking expectingly at you, or Cece didn't eat her food and she needs. Cece ate her food. Okay, good. So it's always the thing. You go live and the dogs want out immediately. That's the way it works around here. So that's all together. And I did. Yeah, Beth Emily says, I enjoyed the live stream of your pour. We did run the pour part. There was another 2 hours of work after that we did, just related to smoothing it out and edging it. And while it did the initial cure, keeping up on making sure it was all, good to go. And of course, I can't think of all the words for all of the things I learned how to do, but that is what it is. What's cool about that, and the reason I did it this way, is I am now prepared to oversee small pours on my property, and as is he. So that means with some help and some tools, we can oversee the pours, because I spent about $2,000 for the pour, maybe $2,200 for the pad. And the lowest bid I had for that pad was $4,500. So from an independence fund standpoint, it was worth investing. I think I invested from 10 in the morning till about 3 in the afternoon. That's a significant amount of time. But I was also learning, and, I could have invested less time to still get it done. But that means we can oversee pours, which means instead of paying somebody $20,000 to do the pour under Taj Mahal, I'm pretty sure we can get that done for about 5 in materials and tools. And, we may have to pay somebody to help us I think it'd be better with 3 people for any pour. Like we can do it with 2 if we're professional, but we're not. We're
I
not.
think 4 or 5 would be ideal.
Yeah. So how to oversee a concrete pour is not a bad subject for a homestead video. Yeah. Well, and I think it would be a really good class. Like an actual class here, how to oversee the pour. I just have to think, because like once the concrete comes, the concrete is here, and the clock starts ticking, and then you gotta be on it, right? So that with a lot of people is like, how do we make sure they learn and also not mess up the pour? Because taking it back out is not what anybody wants to do.
It's also kind of a deal. It's just good knowledge to have, because speaking as a mechanic, if I go into a mechanic shop and they're like, well, you need to do this, it's not very difficult for me to be like, yes, I do need to do that. Or no, you just want to bill me for an extra $500 because I don't need to do that. I actually had somebody try to bill me for, what was it, $1,847 for something that I didn't need. And I knew I didn't need it because I just replaced it the month before.
Yeah. Skanes Girl says prep work is the key to a good pour. And the prep work was done well for this. So that's it. Eric Myers wants to learn. You can come out and help us pour next time I'm ready. I actually, so the reason the stream started late is I've been sort of on this trajectory that was going to be about September 2025 that my house was paid off. And I got a note and was closed out of my account for the mortgage this morning. And apparently it's September 2024. I'm going to have to pay it off because I enter into this weird zone where my principal balance, basically the majority of my payoff balance is for the fact that because my insurance is sent to them, it's escrowed out, right? And so my balance on my principal is lower than my monthly payment. But my payoff amount is much higher than that because my hazard insurance was so high this year for this house. So I was on the phone like, well, what do I do about that? And like, I guess technically I could be paying it off for the next year, but what's going to happen is it's going to get paid off. And I was just trying to make sure, like, because I didn't want to have like some stupid clerical thing happen where I lose my house when I only owe $900 principal on it. And it, like, I didn't send some other hoobly doobly thing and then I don't have my house, because that would be like, one of the primary focuses has been to pay this homestead off. And so anyway, so that's going to be a whole nother thing. I don't exactly know where that's going 100% right now, but I'm pretty sure I know where it's going 100% of the time. So there we go. It was, and like, I don't have any access to any history of anything now because they just turned it all off. Super helpful.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I can transfer you to the other department. I'm like, I got a show to do, like, whatever. Now that I know what I have a payoff amount, I can just mail you a check and then I don't have to deal with this anymore. And then the only problem is at tax time, like they have to send me tax paperwork anyway, because I've paid off other things before. So I'll have an actual title to this place. Yeah, not bad. So yeah, that was a surprise this morning. Surprise! Pay off the mortgage. Okay. Next up, we have what? Babies. We have actually multiple baby stories this week. So chickens hatched babies, and then mom didn't take care of them well enough, and there are no babies. And she's setting on eggs again. Is she still setting on eggs?
I don't know. I haven't been down there, but I'm probably going down to pull all those eggs because she doesn't need to be sitting on eggs right now. So
yeah, there's that. And it's sad because I was looking forward to having more American breast chickens, but apparently I have dud moms. Or it's the pasture.
Yeah, it doesn't help that like that pasture seriously needs to be mowed, and I have not gotten around to that.
Why not?
We're not even going there.
I'm just giving him a hard time. I desperately wish I had a cup of coffee in my hand right now. So at some point you're going to have to go into a long explanation so I can do that. Okay. So the other thing is the rabbits were bred about 4 weeks ago. They're due Saturday, or when did you put the the bucks in?
I don't remember.
Was it a
'Cause
Saturday or a Sunday? Do you remember that?
it was, I think, the day that you left for
So they're
California.
due Sunday, and because I actually wrote it down, but I just don't have the calendar in front of me. So we got the nesting boxes in. Last week I talked about getting cutting boards for the base of them, and the cutting board, they didn't have those cutting boards at Dollar General. So I bought the plastic placemats, and they're working great. Put them in there, put straw in there. One nest has rabbit fur, but no rabbits in it. So my theory is, I've never seen a rabbit do this, but she pre-made her nest,
Yeah.
or she just didn't give birth to anything and just thought I'll put fur in a nest. But she's not really due till Sunday, so we'll see if we have a little wiggling. The way you know they've given birth is like the nest is like a mix of rabbit fur and straw, and you'll go down there and you'll be like, why is it poofy? And then it'll move a little bit, and that means that the kits have been born. So the other one has not done anything with her nest, and I'm not sure that she's feeling great. So Skeins Girl says she's a welfare chicken. You need to find the coordinating grandma chicken to raise them. Yeah, exactly. So then there was the moving of the rams.
Yep.
How was the move? I had a really fun time moving the rams. So we needed to move the rams by separating them from the ewes. And the reason is that we don't want these rams impregnating the ewes.
Yeah.
In summary. So in order to do this, here's how the process is going to go. Get all of the sheep into the barn. Let the girls out of the barn. Put the girls back in their paddock. Get the boys into the livestock trailer. Drive them to their new place. Get them out of the livestock trailer and go. And so in my mind, I'm like, that'll be 2 hours. In his mind, I'm sure that wasn't true. But in my mind, I was like, that'll be 2 hours. So we get them down the hill into the barn. We leave them there overnight because then they're less like skittish from having been moved. And then the next thing we did was get them in the barn and separate girls from boys and bring the girls back up. And that took about 2 hours, I think. Like just that took 2 hours. And along the way, we found out one of the dogs had a broken toe. How's his foot?
He's doing better.
Okay. He's been on carprofen, so he's doing okay. And of course, I'm like, of course, like never had an injury in these dogs before. And today we have like the dude on carprofen. So then got them back up the hill. That was a whole thing. And it was, sunny and warm. And so then we took a break, like a coffee break, and then went back over to get the rams. And again, in our mind, we're like, we'll drive them towards the trailer. They'll get in the trailer, but they're sheep. And you know what sheep do when something is different?
They don't want.
They do not trust it. They don't want to do anything you want to do. I didn't have a way like with boards to just drive them in there, which is what we needed to be able to do. And then the barn is not our barn. So it is not, it's got, it's old and it has places that little teeny rams can crawl under and through and jump over that would not be there if we rehabbed that barn, basically. So they can be in one stall and they'll figure out how to get under into the next stall, for example. Yeah. Some of the doors to the stalls close, some don't. It was a goat circus, but it was really just a ram circus.
Yeah.
And then finally, he got nailed in the knee by a ram. And it went through his leg. So I thought it nailed him somewhere else. I thought you were like permanently sterile because you went down.
Yeah, he caught me beside the kneecap where all the nerves and everything run. So it didn't drop me, but it was definitely, I was not going anywhere after that.
He said words that I will not repeat on this podcast. And then I was like, well, if he's down, I'm making sure no rams get near him just in case. But the rams weren't mad. They were scared. So they weren't like trying to headbutt him.
He was not trying to ram me. He just happened
to be running between his legs and got his knee. Yeah.
Yeah. He just.
I'm pretty sure if a ram like intentionally hit you in the knee, it would break your knee.
I mean, that was about like if he was actually trying to fight me, that's about the impact that it would have been.
Okay. So then I grabbed that ram by the scruff of his neck and got him on the ground. And then he recovered enough to where he like, because when you hurt, you just like sit there and you moan and you recover until it doesn't hurt. It's like I have to scream a few times for the pain to abate, or it doesn't abate as quickly. That's not what you did, but that's what I do. And then he got up and picked up the ram and carried him and put him in the trailer.
Yep.
And that was the biggest ram. And then there were 4 more. Each one of them got picked up and put in the trailer. And then we drove the trailer over, and and they're alarmed, right? We drive the trailer over, get the chute going from the trailer to the paddock that has all this nice grass and vegetation for them to eat. We opened the door, and what did they do?
Stood there.
They looked suspiciously out the door and wouldn't leave. So then he had to drive them out of the trailer, which actually that didn't surprise me when that happened. And then they found this one rock in this far corner of the pasture and proceeded to basically stay there for 2 days.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, so they had never been apart from their moms before. And they're all young and they don't know what's the what's. And at this point, they've figured out their ram hierarchy. They're coming to their food bowls suspiciously, though. They're very suspicious.
Sheep always are.
The little black-nosed one who's the most suspicious actually took a drink of water near me last night. Because I've been starting to go there and sit in the pasture for 20 minutes in the evening near their food, put treats in the bowls to try to get them more handleable, because our whole life will be easier if they become friendlier. And in particular, one of the rams is just beautiful. Bruni's ram is beautiful. And so we're like, well, if he doesn't breed with her, then we could keep him and he can breed with everybody else.
Yeah.
So there you go. And right after SRF, we're going to have ram of some sort in the pasture, unless I can't find one. But I have a feeling what's going to happen is Bruni's going to come over here with all the girls that are too young to breed. And Rama Blam Blam is going to go over there.
Yeah.
Except for there are 4 rams here that are not ready to process yet. So we're going to have to think about how that works.
Yeah.
So that the keeper ram is the most ready to process, as a matter of fact. Okay. There you go, opening your fizzy water in the mic again. He started it and then he looked guilty.
I was hoping it wasn't going to make that much noise.
It always does. It always does. I will say this, like Nighthawk helped us with moving. So it took 3 of us to move those rams, and we were done by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then we did nothing of consequence after that.
Yeah, I mean, it did not go the way that I wanted it to go, but it did go the way that I expected it to go.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And I will say that just having homesteaders around who will help has been, I would say, in the last 2 years for me in particular, very, 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 very helpful.
Yeah.
So that's, with all the stuff going on in my personal life this year, it like having the extra hands has been huge. So what'd you find in the pasture?
I think it was yarrow.
Okay.
I don't know that for a fact because I didn't get over there to look at it, but it was one of those deals where I was in the middle of doing something and I happened to look down and I was like, that is very distinctive and it looks like yarrow, and I did not put yarrow up here.
Well, yarrow will grow in the area.
Yeah. So it was just like an unexpected look down and see something that I wasn't expecting to see, and was like, huh.
See that you've been driving around with yarrow seeds in your pocket?
No, I mean, I've thrown yarrow seeds out in a couple of places, but nowhere close to the pasture.
Yeah. So it's always nice when so the interesting part of rehabbing this pasture, which was very brushy and overgrown when we started 2 years ago on it. Was it 2 years ago or two and a half? I don't, they were here for a long time before they were there. So after you rotate the sheep through, different stuff grows. And then they've rotated through numerous times now. And it seems to just facilitate an environment every time we rotate them through where the sheep are the pasture is more tailored to the sheep every time we rotate them through. So I really need to get a thing in for Spirko's show about what it's like, would really like to raise sheep.
Yeah.
Because I always hear people talk about it and I'm like, but you don't have sheep.
Who's talking about it that doesn't have sheep?
I don't think Ferguson has sheep.
Oh.
He might have sheep, but he knows a lot about sheep. He has goats.
I would listen to Ferguson in that aspect.
Yeah.
Like, there's some people that.
So it's not that he doesn't know what it takes.
Yeah.
It's that our experience with hills and rocks and like normal Tennessee terrain, basically, is very different than somebody who has a flat area.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about what it's like to rotate that many sheep through a hilly, rocky area and to have to keep the rotation up all the time.
Yeah.
Because this is not something where you set it up and you just do something in the morning and do something in the evening and you're done. Like if you had a full-time job,
this would not happen.
that wouldn't happen. And what it would mean is you need to change how you manage the sheep at that point.
Yeah.
And you'd be managing them in a way where you had to use chemical interventions for worms.
Probably. And, it's one of those deals, too, where there's so many variables. Because if I was doing the same thing on a flat piece of ground, like in Mississippi where my parents are, like, this would be a whole different story because I could run a lawnmower everywhere in like 10 minutes.
But I'd like to talk about the infrastructure investment costs total and all of that stuff. So this is, by the way, it's not me calling out Nick Ferguson. He's been instrumental in making sure we trained our livestock guardian dog right. Yeah. And the sheep have been hugely helpful. But I sometimes hear people say just get sheep, and the word just does not should not be in the same sentence with it. Like, it's a time investment. It's a choice you want to make, and understanding the time constraints, I think, is important. Now, if you already have fencing in and a really awesome barn and all of the supplies you need, it's a lot easier to do.
Anytime somebody says, "Oh, just get sheep," my first thought is, "You don't have sheep, do you?" Like, whether it's sheep, goats, chickens, anything, it's like, you don't actually have that, do you?
Sheep are easier than goats.
Sheep are easier than goats, but like, it's the way that Nick Ferguson would never say, "Just get goats."
Yeah. He would be like, "Get this breed. Here's how you have to have the fencing in advance." Like, all of it. I have a friend who raised sheep where she was able to just get sheep and, check in on them like we check in on the ducks twice a day, and it's it.
Yeah.
And so, like, she could leave for work and come back and everything was fine, and they just gave birth, and sometimes some were stillborn. And the way she did it is she had a sheep paddock, like a big pasture, and a barn near the house, like a little shelter barn. And they were 100% of the time on just that one area. They didn't rotate anywhere. It was Katahdins. And that was a lot easier. So I would say the reason it takes more intervention is the rotating of the sheep every 3 to 7 days.
Yeah. And it's also, for this specific situation, a lot more difficult right now than it will be in the future, because what I need to do today is go plow through a bunch of bear's foot that's about 4 to 6 feet tall so that I can run the fence for one of the next paddocks. But that's because it's in the upper end of the pasture. Down on the lower end of the pasture, there's a spot that has not been cleared in a while, and I wouldn't have to do that because the sheep have been through there enough that there's not bear's foot growing there anymore.
Right. So it does, as time goes on, it does get easier. Okay, carnivore update. Week 2 of carnivore. How are you going to give an update, or are you just going to drink your water?
I don't know. I thought you were going to talk about
How are you doing on carnivore after week 2?
Not really much different for me.
He's not technically on carnivore because he put non-carnivore stuff on his burgers last night.
Put a little bit of onion and a slice of pickle. Oh my god.
So the hardest part,
gonna end.
it is the hardest part about carnivore for me is that last night I made burger patties for dinner because it's easy, and I couldn't have a slice of onion on there. And you may think that that's taking it too far, but I'm doing this for a metabolic reset after being so sick in August, and I'm not messing with it. Like I'm literally sticking to it. So I sliced onions for him because I knew he'd want them, but yeah, that part I was just like, man, like it is better with that contrast and flavor of that snap of the onion, but that was fine. Last week I had gone up a pound in weight. This week I went down 2 pounds from that weight. So we'll see where it goes. I'm supposed to be having 3 meals a day of as much fatty meat and eggs as I want. I'm already at the point where that if I manage 2 meals, it's a big day. Like it's hard for me to do multiple meals on carnivore, but we'll see. At some point, I think my body's I'm supposed to go with what my body says. And that's when I was only getting 300 calories a day. I was like, my body's probably not correct. But at this point, I'm getting a reasonable amount. So we'll see how it goes. I'll report back once a week. Okay. The raised bed garden area, we mentioned last week that we put in the sage, and that's doing well, despite the fact my dog tried to kill it because she's decided that raised beds are beds. And then I saw some Swiss chard at the store. I didn't start these seedlings myself. And so just putting in about 20 Swiss chard plants in there to grow, because I love eating Swiss chard. And at some point I'll be off carnivore, probably about the time the Swiss chard is ripe again. And it overwinters really well, especially if you put like a row cover over your raised bed. That's what I do in the aquaponics system. We'll have a couple of plants added there too. So that bed's basically going to be planted out. I was going to do some cover cropping on that, but I just decided why not just plant it out with stuff that works in the winter? Because I think the timeline for getting the other raised beds up and running is going to be sometimes toward the end of October. Because once I get back from the Self-Reliance Festival, then we will be then able to do more of the sort of the catch-up stuff that we're doing around the property from me taking most of like spring and summer off. Like my spare time was not spent on the homestead this year at all. So, oh, you made me coffee? Thank you. Oh, what a pretty cup. Look at this cup. It has little flowers. I had made myself a cup of coffee and lost it before this. That's what happened. Holler roast, delicioso. Okay, so that's the bed update. And okay, you know how? Remember when you asked me about if the garden was in the wrong place?
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved the garden. Like I basically gave up on the garden about a week after we had that conversation, right?
I think you had given up on the garden before that.
Yeah. No, I like
this year.
I for real had given up on it though right after that. And I was like, if I put any like serious plant energy in, it's going to be food forest or it's going to be the new garden space because or the aquaponics system because like why even bother at this point? So that's where I was mentally. So we were sitting out under Taj Mahal, kind of talking about the garden, getting ready for the pour, because you were a little anxious about that pour, weren't you?
Yeah, that pour was one of those things that it's like if you screw it up, it's not like, oh, let me unscrew this 2x4 and throw it in the dumpster and I'll go get another 2x4.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard, like if you screw it up, it's hard to take it back out. And as we were sitting there, at some point, he wants to build his place.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were kind of talking a little bit about that. And I was like, where are those rabbit nest boxes? He's like, down at the workshop. I'm like, that workshop is not located in the right place either. He's like, well, to be honest with you, it would probably be better in where your garden used to be. So I was like, that's right. So there's been this ongoing debate about whether we try to repair the workshop building that was built in 1970, rip it down and build a new one there, rip it down and he built his house there, or now it's, do we build a new workshop / barn up where my garden used to be, which is basically the first time Nick Ferguson came here. He's like, your barn should be here, by the way.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. And or do that and then tear down the workshop building completely. What do you think?
I mean, right now I haven't actually been up to really look at the garden space to see, like, taking any measurements or anything to see what would fit there or how or whatever. But it's like, just the thought process of it would be for me to put workshop / barn up there, rip part of the concrete out where the workshop is, and basically turn that into more of a hip camp area / extra, like, I don't know, have a little pole barn style gazebo thing down there, and, you know, make a great place for, especially once, you know, you get everything terraced off right, it would be a great place to put tents for people staying for the workshop, extra pasture,
all of the things. So he's where I'm at, basically. That was the long version of, yeah, that's a good idea. For me, it's this. We have the workshop. There are things in the workshop that are, the rain is not falling on them, but it's not a super usable space. But it could be made into one. But the soil to wood contact there has not been good on the building. And if we built a barn / workshop up here, we can get that all built, all set up, while all that stuff is still not being rained on down there and not up under my carport, and then get the stuff moved in, and then think about taking that building down. And then that leads us with a concrete pad that's level, which is perfect for a glamping spot.
Yeah.
And having the glampers a little bit away from the house for the agritourism thing makes a lot of sense. So looks like Homestead Medical and Tag are in the house. So that's you know, back to the zone approach to planning out your homestead. This homestead wasn't designed from that standpoint before I bought it, right? And I didn't realize permaculture existed till I'd been here for a while. And as we've been implementing more of the permaculture approach, and, you know, major things are changing, like the garden moving. For me, the garden had to, like, I had to mentally see it physically move before it became, my mind became open to the workshop could go where the garden used to be. So it's like when you fix one zoning issue, other ones, I call it a zoning issue. It sounds like I'm in government. Anyway, when I fix one of those issues, then other things open up. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of permaculture guys talk about, don't design your own property. Design somebody else's first, because you're not emotionally attached to things.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see how that's super helpful. So it's just, it's like it's unfurling it. The design is unfurling itself at this point. And it's funny because we talk about permaculture design as if we're in charge of it. And I feel like it's in charge of it. It's like it's developing itself. Is that too weird and esoteric?
It's more, to me, it's more along the lines of, what is it they say with artists? The sculpture was already in the stone. The sculptor just brought it out.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that's a lot of what I'm doing with just little stuff like controlling where the water goes. It's like I'm making little adjustments here and there to change what it's already doing.
Yeah. So with that in mind, Carrie Brown has offered to teach a class at my place on November 2nd. that integrates permaculture design with choosing the right kind of trees and the right varieties of trees and where to plant those trees, and also goes over how to plant a tree right.
Mm-hmm.
And this class will be 5 hours long at my place, and then we're planting trees. I do not expect you to go out and plant trees for me. If you want to go out and watch them be planted or plant one, that's great. We're only adding what, like 6 trees to the property?
I don't know how many in total, because like
We already have trees in, but
yeah.
we have trees that didn't do well and they'll be replaced. Plus we removed a bunch of trees that were doing too well. they were just not part of the vision.
This whole thing started because I would like to put some trees in some specific locations where there's a lot of restrictions, and everybody teaches a class on how to plant a tree. Nobody teaches a class on how to find what tree you need.
Right. So this class is, I'm paying Carrie. This class is $90 if you want to take it. If we do it, I'm asking people who are interested to drop me an email to Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. If you put it in the comments, I might see it, but definitely going to see it if you email me and say you're interested. It's November 2nd. We'll probably start at 9 or 10 in the morning, so you have time to get here without having to get up super early. We do the class, we have lunch, and then when the class is done, Carrie and Tactical and I are going to go plant some trees, and then Carrie's going to go home. That's what I think is going to happen. So that's the class. We are still harvesting. So even though I'm carnivore right now, we're still harvesting from the garden. And what's happening, it always at this time of year is peppers, basil's coming on pretty good, and other herbs. It is time. Do you have peppers that need to come off and be handled?
Not really.
Okay.
I have some that could, but
I have a bunch of jalapenos that I need to get processed before the first frost. And I have a tendency with my jalapenos to leave them on the vine as long as I can reasonably. Yeah. And I'm getting into that phase of, we're getting past that. If I pull the shade cloth back, that will accelerate though.
Yeah.
So we pulled the shade cloth back on the tomatoes. The tomatoes have slowed down, but I've got a lot of green tomatoes on there. So I'm hoping that they decide they want to ripen. But if not, I will bring them in then just leave them on the counter and they ripen over time. And it doesn't really matter to me right now because I'm eating carnivore. Chuck says, what class is it? November 2nd. It's going to be a permaculture approach to planting, sourcing, and planting trees on your property. So it's going to, it involves elements of how you do permaculture design, how you do your site assessment, how you choose what kind of tree goes where. And then from there, what varieties are suited to your local area? Where do you source those trees? How do you set them up for success in that place? Things like that. So it's going to be taught by Carrie Brown of Strong Roots Resources. So you're prepping the sheep pasture for winter. What are you doing to do that?
I mean, it's mostly not even like something that I'm doing deliberately, but it's just we're hitting the phase of stuff's about to slow down as far as growth goes. So it's like there's going to be a last push as far as clear all the paddock lines. And that's just done for the winter until next spring. And I'm also in an area right now where it's like you're about to box yourself into a corner as far as
moving the sheep,
their access.
Okay.
Is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because you're they're moving up into a corner. So it's like once I string the fence, you can't get up past that to get to the upper paddocks. So I'm about to really hammer getting a bunch of stuff cleared in the next couple of days. And then once that's done, most of the clearing part of everything is just going to be done for the winter.
Yeah. Are you going to try the possibility of the property next door to that also starting to move them there in winter?
Yes. There's also one of the other neighbors has a strip of land that they're not using for anything. I've already kind of scoped it out and it won't be overwhelmingly difficult to run fencing over there. So I'm kind of, with everything going on right now and stuff is still growing, I'm kind of inclined to just wait until the leaves drop, and then it'll be a lot easier to go through there and, clear stuff once, and then I can go through and run the fencing and actually possibly run the sheep through there this winter to get a good initial clearing on everything through there. And then that'll open up probably an extra 5 paddocks.
Yeah, which will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next Tuesday, what's happening?
I have no idea.
There's a delivery.
Oh.
What's happening next Tuesday?
Wait. You are talking about the pool, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You're getting a pool.
So the swim spa is being delivered next Tuesday. And once that happens, I feel like we could set up a temporary glamper site and put the camper in it.
Okay.
And rent it. What do you think?
Maybe.
Where would you put the camper right now mentally with the pool in place? Would you put it where it was
Back
before?
where it was.
Or would you put it up there?
No, I'd put it back where it was.
Okay.
Below the roasting shack.
Below the roasting shack and just have it open up facing the hill?
Probably.
Yeah, because getting it in there any other way is hard.
Yeah.
Yep. So with that in mind, we may get the glamper set up and rentable for fall, if people are interested in renting it. But that's an income generator. Like, that's been the purpose of the glamper, is to get it set up so it's kind of nice to stay there for people who are coming through. And the only issue is going to be when it starts freezing the water.
No.
But other than that, it's got heat, it's got cooling, it's got a shower. I could throw a composting toilet in there.
No.
Or they can walk to the outhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my thought on how to get some more revenue coming in from local. And the other thing is, I will have 140-year Timmy seeds available in about another 2 weeks. Which everybody heard the story of that tomato and they're like, I want some of those seeds. I will be selling them. I will not be selling them for all that much, so it won't really be bringing revenue in, but it takes something to put them in packages and mail them. So yeah. Anyway, and I think it's great to preserve that variety. So yeah. Anyway, that's all we got today, guys. Any questions from the live stream? You've got about 10 more seconds to get your question in, or we're going to wrap for the day. And I'm going to dive straight back into Self-Reliance Festival preparations. We're sending out a big email today to all attendees that's just sort of a summary, like we always do, of what's happening and links back to all the various agendas. We took the agenda and broke it out into different topics. So like the demonstration agenda is a separate piece of paper from the session agenda, which is a separate piece of paper from SRF Kids, in the hopes of making it a little bit easier to understand what's going on when. I used to just put out this table of everything at one time, and I think people who don't read spreadsheets didn't like my agenda very much. That was my impression. So we're getting close. Self-Reliance Festival is 2 weeks away. Homestead Medical's on right here. He's got a badass class about closures, advanced wound closure, and you don't want to miss that if you are the person who's responsible for taking people who have a tendency to cut themselves. It's a very important skill to have, especially when, if like me, you live in an area where urgent care will not do stitches. Because urgent care will not do stitches here. They will send you to the emergency room, and then you're paying $4,000 for a couple of sutures, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's totally ridiculous. When I was a kid, it's like, oh, we'll just go to the family doctor, and they're like, boop, 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 done. And it hurt like a mow, but it was done, as I recall.
I got sewn up on my neighbor's kitchen table when I was a kid.
You have a doctor dad.
So was the neighbor.
Oh, was it the neighbor doing it, not your dad?
Both of them were.
Hold him down. Hold him down. DFW says, if we close on the property time, we'll be there. Yeah, it'd be great to see you at Self-Reliance Festival. Wish you all were closer to Central Texas. Jimmy, road trip. There's people coming up from Texas. You could probably jump in a car. Anyway, with that, if you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at Holler Roast. 2, consider becoming a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, go out, make it a great week.